Welcome back to another MOTOBOB video where today you join me on the international press launch for the brand new Triumph Tiger 1200. This bike's had a massive overhaul, so fortunately we've got a full day on the road to test it out and then a full day off-road. But is it as good as Triumph promised it would be? Well, let's find out. But before we get started, a massive thanks to Merlin for coming on board and sponsoring the channel. They fixed me up with some awesome new gear for this trip, including their Edale Jacket from their Heritage collection. Now it's got all the good looks of a traditional wax jacket, but it uses a modern fabric called Kotec. That makes it much lighter and offers better breathability and abrasion resistance. Plus, it's armoured, has loads of handy pockets, a removable thermal liner, and some nice extra details for that premium look. Now it pairs perfectly with their Ranton II Gloves from their adventure-focused Explorer range, which again offer great looks, but with all the protection and features you'd expect from a modern glove. And because they know me so well, they also sent out one of their black Burford baseball caps to wear too. Perfect! There are links in the description where you can find out more. So we've just had a really good morning of a variety of riding, some twisties and some motorway work and a bit of town to get away from the hotel. And I've also been able to get some miles in on the Rally Explorer with the big 30-litre tank, and then this more road-focused GT model as well, so plenty of chance to get familiar with both varieties. Now the big thing that I wanted to know about this bike when it's actually on the road is whether that T-plane crank from the Tiger 900 makes the engine a little bit too buzzy for proper touring purposes. On the Tiger 900 it's fine at like 70, but when you start to push on a little bit, it does start to creep in that buzziness and it can get a little bit wearying after a few hours on the motorway. Now, of course, this bike vibes more than the previous Tiger 1200 with its even, regular 120-degree crank, but I think the extra capacity and power and torque means it's not working as hard as the Tiger 900 at motorway speeds, and so it feels more like a gentle pulsing than a buzz, and you've got about 1,000 RPM of buffer or headroom before it does start to get a little bit vibey up at like 5,500. You do notice that extra sort of feel of torquiness when you're around town and in the low revs, and I look forward to finding out how that feels off-road tomorrow. The sound is great as well, and it just has a really nice feel to it, so overall I think the trade-off is worth it. All the other aspects of the engine I've found to be really good. It's got a nice light clutch, the gearbox feels good, and I think the quick shifter is excellent. And I also like the sort of smoothness of the throttle response in the road riding mode and then the liveliness in the sport mode. You know, Triumph always make those claims about triples being super versatile because they've got torquiness but then also plenty of top end, but it really is a super versatile engine. In the mid-range it rides really pleasantly and nicely and it feels practical and usable, but when you do wind it up, you really quickly remember that it does have something in common with the Speed Triple. Absolutely bags of power for this type of riding, and it's a real standout feature of the bike. Now this one is the regular GT Pro with the regular fuel tank, but if you go for the GT Explorer or the Rally Explorer, you get a 30-litre tank. Now Triumph are claiming a range of 600 kilometers on those Explorer models, and so I did a bit of a sensible riding test earlier and just stuck it on cruise control and tried to stay at 70. And I found that that estimated range was pretty much on point. Quite often on these launches there's a lot of twisty roads to assess the handling of the bike, and of course people do like to open the throttle a bit. When you're doing that sort of riding, I found the fuel economy was more like 6-point-something litres per 100 kilometers, so that'd bring it down a bit to between 400 and 500 kilometers, but definitely if you're doing those steady touring miles, the range is super impressive. The other major factor you've got with big mile touring is the comfort levels, and I found this bike to be really very comfortable today. You've got a really wide and high bar position, and I've got the seat in the low setting, so relatively that sits you down a bit versus the bars, but it does feel like a very sort of commanding position. These heated seats are actually quite cushy as well. It's definitely got a nice soft feel to it. Personally, I don't mind a firm seat, but I know that it is a big factor for some people, and this is definitely a lot more cushy than something like the Tiger 900s. Wind protection feels good as well. You've got the handguards to keep a bit of chill off your knuckles. The tank is also pretty wide, so it gives your legs a bit of protection, although obviously on the 30-litre version you do get a little bit less wind on your lower body, but both versions get this excellent Screen adjustment mechanism. I just can't believe how easy it is to adjust single-handedly while you're on the go. It's so easy that you'd almost assume it would get blown back up by the wind resistance, but no, it's absolutely rock solid, but it just takes a fairly light pull to get it back up again. You've got cruise control, you've got the electronically adjustable suspension, so you can change the damping settings, and also it's got automatic preload. You've got heated grips and heated seats with a separate button for the passenger, and it's basically everything you need for a proper good long day in the saddle. In terms of the rest of the tech package, it's pretty comprehensive. You've got keyless, which includes the steering lock and the fuel filler cap. Plenty of riding modes. It varies by model, but I think there's enough there for most people, and the top spec bikes do get a custom mode, so you can dial it all in yourself. Lean sensitive rider aids, cornering headlights, power sockets for accessories, phone connectivity with the dash for call handling and media playback and turn-by-turn nav. And to manage it, you've got a really quite substantial TFT dash there. I think it's 7 inches. Now, a big plus for me on this bike is the switchgear and the layout and ease of use. It's backlit as well, which you can't say of all the competitors. And look, my own bike is a Tiger 800, which is a few years old now, and it's got almost identical switchgear, which I think is testament to how well designed it is. There's absolutely no need to change it. As for the software in the dash, it can feel a little bit slow to boot up and also to animate when you're moving between different screens, but I think some of the ease of use and sort of navigating through the menus just comes with a bit more time with the bike. Now, one thing I didn't love about the dash on the Speed Triple, which is pretty much the same layout, is that it uses a round graphic in the middle of a rectangular screen, and so you feel like there's a lot of wasted space around it. Similar on here, and again, I don't think it's the best use of screen space, but the dash is quite a lot bigger on this bike, and so the actual sort of readout of the speed and the revs, you know, that's bigger as well. So I think it feels like a bit less of an issue on a physically bigger screen. I do like the sort of drama of the design of it. It's much more exciting to look at, I suppose, than something like the Africa Twin, which is a bit sterile. But I just wish it ran a little bit quicker and also used more of the edges of the screen, perhaps a few more layout options. Probably my favorite tech feature though is the blind spot detection. On the Explorer models, you've got the radar at the back there, and then a light illuminates just under the mirror here when something's in your blind spot. Now, there's an extra safety feature which I don't think any other blind spot systems have, and that's that when you put your indicator on to show that you're going to change lane, if there is something in your blind spot, it will start to flash that light to really dissuade you from actually moving over. It's quite a subtle feature, and you don't really notice it when you're looking at the road ahead, but it's when you look in your mirror and you don't see anything but the light is on, and then you check your shoulder and lo and behold, there's a bike or a car there. Really well implemented on this bike, and it's a feature I'd love to have on any bike for sure. It is worth mentioning that they intentionally decided not to put a front-facing radar on it. The reason being that most customers, when they did their research while they were developing this bike, said that they didn't really care for it. It wasn't something they were looking for, and it would have added to the cost of developing the bike and also the bikes on sale. To be honest, regular cruise control is absolutely fine by me, and I suppose we'll find out whether that research was accurate or valid when it comes to sales figures. But in summary, my overall impressions of it on the road are really very good. I do like the new engine. It handles well, the brakes are excellent, fuel range and economy are decent, it's very comfortable, and then the tech package is up there with the best. Few more miles today, and then a full day of off-roading tomorrow. So we've had an awesome day of off-road riding here in Portugal. As you can see, I'm a little bit dusty, but we've got a nice variety of trails here, and I think they're appropriate for the sort of riding that customers who buy this bike are realistically going to do. It's not going to be super hardcore technical enduro stuff. Much more likely the gravel trails and country roads and that sort of thing. The previous gen, I rode it recently. I don't think I'd really consider taking it off-road. I don't think you'd say it's its strength at all. But with this bike, there are a few key changes that do make it a lot more appropriate for off-road use. Firstly, that T-plane crank, it really does add a lot more of that sensation of torque down at sort of 1,500, 2,000 RPM. Going up some of the inclines and stuff today, you can just ride it on the throttle in second gear, and even when it's getting really low down in the revs, you don't really feel like you need to dip the clutch to save it from stalling. When it starts to sort of like chug away in the low revs there, it really reminds me of how the Africa Twin feels in the low revs, and I'd say that's a massive strength
of that engine, and I guess also validates Triumph's idea that they wanted to give it more of that twin character, and that'd be a good thing. You've also got the more appropriate wheel sizes, so a 21 front and an 18 rear. The previous gen I think was on a 19 and a 17, even in the more off-road biased XC spec. And so yeah, obviously these are going to roll a little better over rough terrain, and the great thing is it really isn't much at the sacrifice of road performance. Going between the GT bikes and then the Rally Explorer on the road yesterday, the difference in handling wasn't anywhere near as pronounced as I thought it to be. And I found out today that one of the reasons is, speaking to the chassis designer, that they've given it a slightly steeper front end in terms of the geometry, and that sort of cancels out the effects of having a much bigger front wheel. And it won't handle quite as sharp as the GT, but it's about as close as you'll get. The other factor is the weight loss, of course, obviously good for off-road riding. And then also you've got the distribution of weight, so things like the radiators are placed side on up in the sort of cowls here. That's allowed them to move the engine down and further forward, and so again that helps with the agility and ease of riding. The previous gen was a much bigger bike than its middleweight equivalent, the Tiger 800, and so I think you'd always just default to the 800 for off-roading, but that gap is much closer now between this and the Tiger 9.
The day finished with a demo of what the Tiger 1200 really can do off-road by 5 times Enduro World Champion Ivan Cervantes, and it really was pretty impressive. It also offered a good chance to reflect on a great couple of days riding and how far the Tiger 1200 really has come. Whether or not it can truly beat a GS is a topic for a head-to-head video in the near future, but clearly this is a big step in the right direction from Triumph, with more power, less weight, better handling, better tech and better looks too. I'd say any issues I've raised in this video are fairly minor or personal preference, so you'd have to say it's a job well done by Triumph. As always, I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments below, and if you're new here and you want to see more motorcycle reviews like this, then please do hit subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.